Hi, this is your hostess, Erin Swenson, for So Much More Than Gender. It's been a while, and I want you to know that this is my sort of New Year's resolution to try to stop being so perfectionistic. I've had a difficult 6 or 7 weeks with lots of projects going on outside of this for other people, and not that I didn't have time to do this, but that I used it to psych myself out and decide, I've got to write down the script for every episode. I need to be very careful and work really hard and spend 40 or 50 hours editing everything. And I decided that perfection isn't all that it's cracked up to be, and that I want this to get out there without delay. So I'm not only doing this, I'm recording this also in video, which will be available in the So Much More Than Gender. I hope I can find the name, but I hope to open a YouTube channel for So Much More Than Gender, and you can watch it there if you like my face. I will have some guests on, hopefully, who will be on air, and you can see them. I don't expect to have a large video presence, however. Before we go on with my story, I have to tell you about Sigrid. Sigrid is the love of my life. That's how I describe her. I met her in 1967 at church camp, and we were married by that Christmas, less than 6 months later. It was 1967. Vietnam was raging, and I was in college. I had finished 2 years and was transferring from one college to another, and in the transfer lost a whole year's worth of credits. You don't transfer from an electrical engineering program into a liberal arts program without getting hurt, and I did. Sigrid, by contrast, had just graduated from Agnes Scott College, and so she was a couple of years older and wiser than I, and we got married. And I fell so much in love with her. At church camp, we were counselors to a wilderness camp together, where we went out in the wilderness with 8 or 9 senior high kids, and formed a family for 3 weeks. And it was kind of like trying it on, and it was beautiful. It was wonderful. And it became the model for what was to come in the years ahead. We were married and came back. Sigrid went to work. She decided against graduate school, and I continued to plow into my schoolwork as well as work some miscellaneous jobs to try to keep ends together. And it was that way for several years until our first daughter was born. It was 3 months into our marriage, however, that disaster struck for me. When I fell in love with Sigrid, for some reason, my need to cross-dress, to spend hours fantasizing about being a woman, all of the stuff that was stuck in my mind and was my daily obsession disappeared. It was a wonderful time, the 3 months between mid-December and actually mid-June when I met Sigrid, and mid-March of 1968. I was in heaven. And then one day I was at home alone. Sigrid was at work, and I found myself dressed in my wife's clothing, looking at myself in the mirror and being completely devastated. It was the beginning of my living in secret. It was devastating to me. I became very depressed. Thinking back on it and talking about it now, I probably should have told her about it. But I'm certain, and I was certain at the time, that had I done that it would have really ended our marriage. And looking at it from this perspective, that would have been a very big mistake for me. I'm not so sure for Sigrid, but it would have been for me because our marriage was a precious thing in my life. I decided to keep it a secret, and I managed to live with it by overworking, and I had lots to do. Inga, our first child, came into our lives in our third year of marriage. We were living on the seminary campus, even though I still had another year of college to do because the seminary enrollment was down, and they needed to rent out. They needed the rent from our apartment. So we moved into the seminary student housing a year early while I finished my last year of college with our brand new baby daughter. I was at the time working at a major Atlanta department store, almost full-time, and of course finishing up my seminary degree and trying to be a good father at the same time. And I found that a great mix. I could do all of that and really overwork, and it kept me at a level of depression that I could cover up with all of the activity, and so it worked. It worked well. I went through clinical training, decided to go into a graduate degree program, started it, and then for the purpose of gaining some experience, headed off to be the assistant pastor of a church in Dalton, Georgia. So we packed our little family of 3 up and moved to Dalton. And after a couple of years there as minister of education, our second daughter was born. Laura was born at 26 weeks, which was almost 14 weeks prematurely. And she was about 3 pounds. All was fine except that she had a problem with breathing. Her lungs had a terrible problem and she could not breathe on her own. So she required a respirator, which meant that she required intensive care. And so Laura and I, the night that she was born, we flew from Dalton, where we were living, about 200 miles to Columbus, Georgia, where the only neonatal ICU bed was in the state that was available. And Laura stayed there for a couple of weeks. She came home, and we thought things were going okay. And then she stopped responding. Her fontanelle, the little soft part up there that little babies have, that is that open spot in the head, became taut, and that was a warning sign. And Sigrid was a majorly good mother. She saw the sign immediately. We were on the phone, and Laura was in the hospital in the emergency room within the hour. And within the next hour, Laura and Sigrid were in an ambulance heading toward Atlanta to Eggleston Children's Hospital, and I made arrangements for Inga, for our older daughter, and then followed Sigrid on to Atlanta, where we had about 2 or 3 months of nightmare. Laura almost died several times. She had a ventricular peritoneal shunt put in, and after some really rocky periods, the neurologist came out of the ICU and told us that he had some difficult news to tell us, and so we steeled ourselves for hearing what no parent wants to hear. And he said, as I recall, he said, "Laura is going to live." And of course, oh, that's wonderful. Then why all the seriousness? And he said, "But she's very small, and she will not grow very much." That's what he said. And he said that would be a good thing because she would not ever walk or ambulate herself. He used the word vegetative, I believe. I hope he didn't use the word vegetable, but he did state that she would be pretty much it wasn't going to be a normal life for Laura. We were devastated. We took her home, and Sigrid, who has a heart like an ox, she has a mother's heart, like a mother bear, huge and strong. And she said to me, she said, I just don't believe him. She said, I look in Laura's eyes and I see something there. She sees me. I know there's someone in there. And she insisted on that until finally we got Laura. At the age of 2, we got her to a developmental clinic for evaluation, and they said, yes, indeed, she needs immediately to be put into education because she has incredible opportunities. She has cerebral palsy. She's probably not ever going to walk, but she can see. She will likely be able to speak. They didn't say that at the time, but we knew that was going to happen. At least I did. And that began our life with both of our daughters, with Laura, who grew into a severely disabled person who was profoundly joyful with her life, and who spread that joy to everyone that she saw. Remember me. Remember me, I'm standing there trying to be a good dad to both Inga, the daughter who, oh God, she was the kind of daughter that parents dream of. I mean, she was, in childhood, she sang songs to herself all day long. She played by herself. She could play with other kids. She helped other kids do it. When Laura came home afterward, and she was, Laura was 4 or 5 years old, Inga would pack her up in our little red wagon with the sides on it, and she would bundle Laura up and sit her in the wagon because she really couldn't sit up by herself. And she would pack a lunch for both of them to take Laura on a tour of our neighborhood so Laura could see the neighborhood, and they went on a picnic. That was the kind of big sister that Laura was. And here I am trying my best to be a good dad, I was a therapist at the time. I was both ordained as a Presbyterian minister. All of the busyness that I had done caused me to accomplish a great deal in my life. I actually had earned 3 graduate degrees, not just my bachelor's degree after being married, but 3 graduate degrees while being married. And so all was well except for my soul. It was not well with my soul. But I did my best, and I worked hard on the house. I reworked that house that we lived in practically from top to bottom. Ripped out paneling and put in drywall, ripped up plywood and put in hardwood flooring, built a 600 square foot deck, designed and remodeled with my own hands, including the cabinetry, our kitchen. Still at the same time keeping a full-time practice going, and for a year of that time also being an interim pastor of a medium-sized congregation in suburban Atlanta. Amazing, amazing that I did that. Sigrid did not know anything of what was going on with me. Our life together was good, except that my depression and I think the way that I demeaned my own self. It wasn't low self-esteem. It was a kind of demeanment. I knew that I was really not worthy of this woman, that I was not worthy of these children, that I was not worthy of being a father, that I was not worthy of being a successful psychotherapist, that I was not worthy of being a valued colleague among my Presbyterian minister friends. I wasn't worthy of any of that. And I carried that around as a secret. I would find odd strange times to cross-dress. When I was writing a dissertation, I would go off to the mountains for a weekend of writing, which of course meant a weekend of writing in the role of a female and not a male, although that never came through anywhere, ensconced at a cabin safely deep in the mountains of North Carolina. It was all a big secret until one day in 1980, I think it was 1988, Sigrid had gone off for a weekend with one of her best friends, Dale. She and Dale used to have a weekend together once a year where they would go off and leave their families. Dale had 2 kids too. In fact, our families kind of grew up together in seminary. We were next door neighbors. So our families were well acquainted and very close, very intimate. And Sigrid had come home from one of her weekends with Dale, and she was sort of debriefing her weekend with her, and she said, Dale said that both she and David was her husband, kind of my best friend at the time, the one relationship that I truly destroyed, I think, in my gender transition. She and Dale had come home, and we've got to remember, I'm living as a guy, doing my best. And she and Dale, she came home and she said, Dale and David think that our relationship is really more like a loving brother and sister than a husband and wife. That hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt so sad. I felt sad partly because I knew Sigrid to be a deeply sexual person. And I knew that our relationship was not facilitating in any way that part of her. And I knew why. The next Monday she went off to work, and I didn't sleep at all that night. I found a small notepad, and I was going to write her a 1-page note telling her that unbeknownst to her, I had been cross-dressing since the age of 10, and that I'd been cross-dressing through all of our relationship, and that I really didn't want to be a woman. What a lie. Oh my God. But then I went on, it was pages and pages. I took this little pad of little notes and filled it up with all the things that I had done that I felt that had transgressed our marriage, and apologized to her, and left it for her, and went off to work. I had group that night, so I wasn't going to be home until like after 9. And I remember coming home really thinking that my suitcase would be out in front of the door. That's what I would have done, because that's the kind of person I am. But that's not Sigrid. I always fail to fathom the depth of that woman. No, it was not a suitcase waiting for me at the door. It was the open arms of my wife. She embraced me. She told me she really didn't know, but it wasn't a surprise either. And, we must have talked for hours. I promised her that I didn't want to be a woman. And, of course, just the fact that I was trying so hard to promise her that was a confession that was exactly what was on my mind. But we made plans. I was not to mess with her clothes. I was to get my own clothes. We sort of set some ground rules for my cross-dressing, that I was going to go get some help from another therapist. I'd been in therapy for my whole life. That I was going to see a therapist who was versed in cross-dressing and gender issues, and all would be well. My God, the next day was like heaven. I'm telling you all of this because that is the woman that I married. She married me, and she stayed with me through the terrible depression that I had at the very beginning of our marriage, when I discovered that I had not moved past this challenge in my life. We stayed together and supported each other through the traumatic birth of a daughter, and then stayed together as Sigrid. And I think I probably helped, but it was because Sigrid was there to support me and move me on. But we had and raised two beautiful daughters. And she even supported me when I told her that. The story obviously goes on from there. But I wanted to introduce you to this woman. This woman who even today, she lives about a mile from me. We see each other all the time. We continue to support each other as parents of these two now adult middle-aged women. We spend holidays together, and we help each other going to doctor's visits. I'm at that age where I'm getting a colonoscopy. Oh yay! Tomorrow, and Sigrid is going to go, and she's going to be my companion for that. And, she said, when I told her that I was going to transition in 1994, God, what a thing for a loving wife to hear from her husband. You just don't expect it. When I told her that, she said that she loved me and she always would. She said she couldn't be married to me because, frankly, she couldn't see herself being married to a woman, and that's what she saw me as. But she said that she would be there with me, for me, through the whole journey. And she has. That's why my life has been so much more than gender. Thank you.